What up? This is Rama Screen, and in the anticipation of Netflix new series Fate, the Winx Saga, which premieres January 22nd, I'm here talking with the music composer of this new show, Anne. How are you, Anne?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you for taking the time. Congratulations. I actually already finished watching the show entirely the other day, and I very much
Right.
enjoyed it. So, how did you get on board this project? And were you familiar with the animated world of Wings Club prior to this?
Well, I was familiar with it because I have two little girls of my own who watch it. And I never really sat down to watch it from beginning to end, but I was familiar with it. I was brought on board by the music supervisor on the show, Matt Biffer, who's I've worked with before. He's worked across a whole range of uh, films and TV series, and he recommended me to Brian Young, the show's creator. And Brian and I had a phone conversation. We just sort of laughed and hit it off really well and had similar ideas for music. I sent some tracks in and he liked them, and that was it. So, yeah, I was really lucky.
So, after getting on board this project, in the process of creating the music for Fate the Wings Saga, did you draw some elements from the animated series or did you start from scratch because this is a complete reimagining that distances itself from the original material?
Yeah, I completely started from scratch. It was really, in terms of the music, had very little to do with the original. As you say, it's a complete reimagining, and it's a much more adult world that's being created. And yeah, and then the original is very much, a children's animation. One of the briefs for the music, well, they have a lot of commercial music in it, and they wanted a lot of very contemporary commercial pop tracks to keep presenting themselves throughout the series, and I guess to draw in a sort of young adult crowd. And so they wanted the music to complement the commercial music in the way that the music had to be um, contemporary and edgy and have a bit of cool factor, as well as creating an otherworldly feel. So Brian was adamant that he did want to feel that there's this magical fairy world, but it could not be twinkly and too soft.
And sparkly.
Yeah, sparkly. None of that. None of that. I put a bit of sparkle in the first bits, and he said, "No, no, no, that's not what we're after." And I completely got what he meant. So and also it's quite a dark series in many ways. So there was a lot of light and shade in the music as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. That actually goes to my next question. So, what style or what sounds or what instruments did you incorporate for Fate: The Wing Saga? Are you, because this is the first time I speak with you? So, are you more like Desplat with heavy emphasis on piano? Are you more like Zimmer with that distinct pattern? Tell us what we hear on Fate: The Wing Saga.
It's a fusion, I'd say, of orchestral music with electronics, which I love to do. I'm orchestrally trained, and but I've also grew up listening to a lot of kind of heavy rock and electronic music,
Hmm.
and I really love to merge the two worlds together. And this was the perfect opportunity. I recorded a small live orchestra at Abbey Road, which was really fun, and then I got to mix them in with synths and some beats and drums, and also I experimented with some sort of more synthy sounds and effects as well that I wanted. Like for the burnt ones, there's always a little weird screaming motif that I created. Um, there's a lot of harp in it as well, but I've tried to use it in
Hmm.
less of a twinkly way, more of a sort of dark, uh, mysterious way.
I'm curious, did you create separate themes for the characters, like a theme for Bloom, a theme for Stella, perhaps?
I did exactly that. So that's what Brian and I discussed, was having a theme for each of the fairies, and they sort of intertwine. Bloom has several themes because she's a complex character,
Hmm.
and she's trying to find her magic. She doesn't come from that world, and so it was creating a couple of themes from her to really emphasize that, her conflict, constant conflict.
I, on a bird's eye view, what is the difference between composing score for a show like this, scripted narrative show like this, and a documentary like the disappearance of Madeline McCann, and composing score for movies like Lost Girls? Is one less stressful or less time constraining than the other?
Um, the approach between documentary and scripted, I find to be very similar. Um, I'd say the only difference with documentaries, you have to be a bit mindful of keeping things held back a bit because there are a lot of talking heads and they need to be heard.
Hmm.
Um, but really, the approach is very similar. It's about finding the tone of the film, of the characters, how to represent them, what's the emotion, what are they feeling, what are they going through, and what is the atmosphere that you have to create. So that's all very similar. In terms of creating music for a TV series versus a film, I find TV series a lot more stressful in that way, just in terms of how you have to manage your time. Because, for example, Winx Fate is a six-part series. So as you're composing for episode one and trying to get into that world and trying to create motifs, suddenly they're editing episode two and episode three, and you're being sent those cuts as well. So it's like composing six mini films rather than one an hour and a half long movie. So you really have to have a lot of organizational skills when you encounter a series like that. And of course, you can start to rework themes, and once you have them established, they carry on throughout the show. But it is a lot of work. It took a long time. I was on that for about the best part of a year, scoring Fate, which was loads of fun. I have to say, it was a great team, and I really loved the show. So
In your conversation or in your collaboration with Brian Young, I'm gonna use the term drafts because I'm used to talking with screenwriters. How
yeah.
many versions or drafts did you go through? Were there examples when Brian like, yeah, we're not gonna use that music. We're gonna, can you come up with another one? And then you have to come back to him with another, you know, uh, attempt, if you will. What's
Yeah.
that process like?
Yeah, sure. There were lots of times when that happened, but they were made up for all the times when that didn't happen, which was great. So my first batch of tracks, luckily, Brian seemed to think they hit the nail on the head, which was great, which was a really good sort of relief for me, and then I could just go. But of course, there's a lot of music in the show, and we would have weekly meetings. First they were face to face, and then the pandemic hit, and then so we had them online, where we would go through every single track meticulously. And a handful of them wouldn't work for Brian, and I could totally see why. And we'd have these really important discussions, and he was very good at articulating why they weren't working for him. Or it could be that Netflix had notes on them, they didn't think certain things were working, so I'd have to go back and try something new. But overall, it was a smooth process and just part of the game with writing music and scripts, I guess.
And finally, what is your advice for aspiring composers that want to break into this business and get steadily hired from one project to the next, such as yourself?
Oh, it's a tough world out there. My advice would be to just keep writing, and keep writing, and practice your skills. Find filmmakers that will get you to score their short films as a practicing tool. Find your voice and keep pursuing it. Be open, realize it's a collaborative process and not just your own music to shine through. You really need to be open to the ideas of the director and producer, and just keep smiling.
Wonderful advice. All right, thank you. And for everybody, for my fans at home, go check out Fate the Winx Saga, premiering January 22nd on Netflix. And thank you for talking to me, and congratulations.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.